Of course, you had Ted's father as well, Ted DiBiase Sr., and indeed at the conclusion of that match we saw what looked like a possible angle. You had Ted DiBiase kind of having a little bit of an argument with Ted, not much said if anything, but certainly it looks like there's possibilities that indeed Ted DiBiase perhaps could head back to Monday Night Raw. Indeed, I believe they thought that he was one of the best guest hosts that they had all last year.
Yeah, I think it's just because that gimmick is just so good, really. It never gets old, and you can still really milk it for all it's worth. And it just brings back all those great memories watching those his video package for the Hall of Fame. Brilliant, just absolutely brilliant. Every one of those skits and the whole Sapphire thing and all that was, yeah, that was a good times.
Now, Ted DiBiase lost this match to Christian. Indeed, I felt like, just like WrestleMania the previous night, this loss did no damage whatsoever to Ted DiBiase. Randy Orton beating him also, I felt, did nothing to damage Ted DiBiase. I think perhaps he's getting a good build. Is this something that we ever see? I mean, it's such a rarity these days.
Yeah, I think Ted's definitely going to be one of the big players in the next 2 years. And you can see that they're putting the focus on him more so than Cody, because I don't think Cody's the greatest of wrestlers, being honest with you, and he just doesn't have that kind of, I don't know, that kind of it factor, I suppose. So unfortunately for Cody Rhodes, I think he's going to get left in the Marty Jannetty buzz of things. So yeah, Ted's going to be the one, I think.
Where do you think Cody Rhodes is going to go now? I mean, it seems to me like Smackdown is calling.
I can see, yeah, I can see Cody over doing some stuff with Chavo, or when the roster changes come through, you know, it'd be a nice filler, Cody v Chavo, and a little build on something, you know. Cody and R-Truth and Chavo, triple threat. Could be pretty cool too.
Yeah, I often wonder, where did Cody go wrong? Was it just that Ted DiBiase had that size advantage? Is he a better worker than Cody? Was it Randy Orton outshining them all that put a bit of a shadow on both those guys? I'm really not sure how it's happened, but indeed, certainly, I rate Ted DiBiase a little bit higher than Cody Rhodes, but would be interested to see what could happen if perhaps you repackage Cody Rhodes with some form of gimmick. I mean, we know his brother became Goldust, and the rest is history since then. That gimmick is still here all these years later. I mean, he started as just that plain guy with pretty much no gimmick as well.
Yeah, I remember it was almost like a cowboy. Probably wouldn't even call it a gimmick. It was just the way his boots and he's the old school buzz. Yeah, that's one thing that's missing, I think, these days. Is just not the extreme gimmick, but the hint of gimmicks. I mean, I think even TNA, the TNA roster has that down to a T. Just a hint of gimmick, not a whole Isaac Yankem or a thing, or a joint thing, but just enough to let that person shine, like the Pope, like Anderson, Matt Morgan. They're not extreme gimmicks. Well, maybe Pope a little bit, but that's what WWE needs more of. And so many of these guys, Cody Rhodes and Vance Archer and all the guys in tights, you know. It just becomes a name game at the end of the day sometimes, especially if you fall out of it for 6 months or 12 months and you come back and there's all just more guys in tights, you know.
It's exactly what happened to me for many, many years. Every time I tuned in to WWF, as it was then, indeed when it became WWE, it seemed to get worse, but it was just that trunks and boots syndrome, just guys with normal wrestling gear and a name, and indeed that's okay, but when the entire roster is like that and you've got these guys with first and second names, I mean, we're used to gimmicks and stuff from the 90s. You know, it's easy to see that from behind us, but without a doubt, I do like to see more gimmicks, but a balance overall.
Yeah, just a balance. That's all we want. And there's another thing ECW did very well. The original ECW, I think. And I think TNA has a hint that WCW could do it pretty well, and WWE in Attitude Days could do it pretty good too. But ECW they had it down best. Just that little bit more grit and less of the safe stuff. I mean, after Mania, we were having serious thoughts about the future, but we'll talk a bit more about that later on, I think.
Yeah, at that point on Monday Night Raw, Triple H came out and cut an emotional promo talking about the retirement of Shawn Michaels, and indeed Sheamus interrupted that promo quite rudely and out of nowhere, and HHH ending up on the ground needing medical attention. Certainly it looks like perhaps this next pay-per-view, Extreme Rules, we might possibly see a rematch of Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Sheamus.
Yep, I think it would be a good idea, and they should put Sheamus over this time, because that will just get him over even more so as the big monster heel, the big Irish heel who's going to create havoc. And there should be no reason why they shouldn't put him over at the next pay-per-view, because Trips has done, he's done Trips a favour now at Mania and the big one, and Sheamus, time to shine.
Yes, indeed, we had Triple H crying, Sheamus coming out, surprising him, and then on to a 5-on-5 Diva match. It was a WrestleMania rematch. Like we hadn't seen enough of it the previous night, they decided that it was worth going for again. Now, unfortunately, that brings me to that point. It's starting to annoy me now, the way the women's wrestling situation is going. We did have TNA Impact and Knockouts. Yes, they're improving it. We had Tara versus Daphne this week, both competitive girls, and indeed the match was as well. And indeed the previous pay-per-view offering was good. So there are some movement, at least in that TNA Knockouts division, but unfortunately the WWE Women's Diva division, if you like, is now, well, there's never any title matches, but that said, there's no US matches or tag team matches or intercontinental match. The list goes on, but what's happening with that women's belt?
Yeah, things have fallen apart at the seams, and just so many tag matches, and throwing everybody in together, one big mix, just get them all in one match and then blitz it, and they continue to do this week after week, and every time you just you might hear Kelly's music come on, you go, oh, here we go, Divas match, and then there's 5 of them with her, and it's like, oh Jesus Christ, not another tag match. It has to stop. I mean, they need to put the focus back on the belts, because what's the point in having the belts? You saw what happened to the unified tag belts, and that situation's no better. So yeah, I've so many people complaining about the booking situation, and I think they're right. Reports of people that went to Mania saying, who've watched it for quite some time, and I mean, I'm sure it's not easy being a booker. I'm not going to sit there and say, we know everything.
How ironic it was this week that Bret Hart was in the company while Shawn Michaels was retiring.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing, and we heard some discussions saying that really that Vince and Shawn kind of had that laugh at Mania because of Bret's poor performance and what he could do. A couple of people spoke of that, and then on the other hand, you got to think Bret's having the last laugh because he's back, and he's going to be a big feature from here on in. But again, I think the hatchet's buried. I think you saw a lot of stuff over the weekend, and between Shawn's promo at the end of Raw and Bret's diary on WWE.com, and even the footage they released on WWE.com with the post-match of Taker and Shawn and all that Bret Hart jive, I think it's there's no, just might be just coincidence.
Well, I'm very glad to see Bret Hart back on TV like yourself. It's fantastic to have him on there, and indeed he will be at the UK tour coming up. All of the dates, I believe, Bret's going to be on the house shows, and I think there's a TV taping as well.